The wheelchair squeaks before anything else. Metal grinding against marble. A rhythm that shouldn't exist in a house this expensive. Tyrell hears it from somewhere behind the double doors. 3 separate squeaks, overlapping, like an orchestra tuning instruments that will never play together. His hand hovers over the brass handle. Cold. Everything here is cold. The driver who brought him didn't speak during the 40-minute ride from the agency. Didn't even look at him through the rearview mirror. Just pulled up to gates that opened without anyone pressing a button. Drove through landscaping that looked painted on, and stopped at stairs too white to be walked on regularly. Now Tyrell stands alone in a hallway wider than his entire apartment. The squeaking stops. Through there, a voice from somewhere. Female. Efficient. Already gone before he can turn around. He pushes the door open. The room swallows sound. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows that somehow let in light without warmth. Everything is beige and cream and carefully neutral, like someone designed a space specifically to feel like nothing. But the boys aren't neutral. 3 of them, identical, small bodies in wheelchairs positioned exactly 6 feet apart, forming a triangle in the center of the room. They don't look at him when he enters. Their eyes track something else. Maybe the light patterns on the floor, maybe nothing at all. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Tyrell closes the door behind him softly. The click echoes anyway. None of the boys react. They're maybe 4 years old. Cafe au lait skin, loose curls cut close to their scalps, wearing identical gray outfits that look comfortable but expensive. The kind of clothes that cost more because they're designed not to look like they cost anything. Their hands rest on their laps. Not moving. Not fidgeting the way children usually do. One of them blinks. The motion feels deliberate. I'm Tyrell, he says, dropping into a crouch 6 feet away from the nearest wheelchair. Eye level matters. He learned that before he learned anything else about this work. I'm going to be here for a while. We don't have to do anything right now. I just wanted to say hi. The boy in the middle tilts his head. 1/4 inch, maybe less. Tyrell notices the camera then. Small black dome in the corner where the wall meets the ceiling. He clocks it without staring, keeps his expression exactly where it was. There's probably more. Houses like this don't install one camera. They install systems. He shifts his weight, scanning the room as naturally as possible. Another camera above the bookshelf that holds books too pristine to have been touched. A third near the window, angled to catch the entire floor space. Maybe more he can't see. Your names are on the chart they gave me, Tyrell continues, pulling his attention back to the boys. But I'm not good with charts. You look like you'd tell me yourselves if you wanted to. The boy on the left's fingers twitch. Small movement, almost invisible. A door opens on the far side of the room. A woman in scrubs walks through. Late 30s, hair pulled back so tight it looks painful, tablet already in her hands. She doesn't acknowledge Tyrell beyond a glance that catalogs and dismisses him in the same second. Vitals, she announces to no one in particular. She moves to the first wheelchair, pressing something on the armrest that makes a screen light up. Numbers appear. She swipes through them with the kind of speed that means she's not really reading, just confirming they exist. Temperature stable. Heart rate within parameters. Oxygen. She pauses, taps the screen twice. Oxygen dropped 0.3% overnight. Is that a problem? Tyrell asks. She looks at him like he just asked if the sun rises in the west. It's documented, she says, which isn't an answer. She moves to the second wheelchair. Same routine. Same non-expressions. The boy doesn't react when she touches his chair, doesn't blink when she pulls up his data. Tyrell watches the third boy instead, the one whose fingers twitched. His eyes are still fixed on the floor, but there's something in the way his shoulders sit, tension that doesn't match the rest of his stillness. They eat at 7:15, the woman says, finishing with the second boy and moving to the third. Formula only, measured to the milliliter. Physical therapy at 9:30. Educational enrichment at 11. Afternoon rest protocol begins at 1. Enrichment, Tyrell repeats. Cognitive stimulation activities approved by their developmental specialist. And what do they like? The woman stops, looks up from her tablet for the first time with something that might be confusion or might be offense. Like music, colors, stories. What makes them happy? She stares at him for 3 full seconds, then returns to the tablet. Their schedule is in the system. You'll receive alerts 30 minutes before each transition. Don't deviate. She finishes with the third boy, the one with the twitching fingers, and heads for the door she came through. Medication is administered by medical staff only. If you need anything, use the intercom. She's gone before Tyrell can ask which panel is the intercom. The room falls back into that hollow quiet. The kind that isn't peaceful, just empty. Tyrell looks at the boys again. They haven't moved, haven't looked at him directly, but he feels seen anyway. Observed in a way that has nothing to do with the cameras and everything to do with 3 small humans learning early that showing interest costs something. He settles onto the floor. Not close enough to invade their space, but present. Visible. That schedule sounds boring as hell, he says conversationally. But we'll figure it out. The boy in the middle's head turns. Just slightly. Just enough that his eyes catch Tyrell's for half a second before sliding away. Tyrell's chest tightens. There. Connection. Brief as a match strike, but there. He starts humming. Nothing specific. Just a low melody his grandmother used to sing when she cooked. Something that fills space without demanding attention. He doesn't look at the boys directly, lets the sound exist as background, lets them decide if they want to notice it or not. The boy on the right's breathing changes. Slower, deeper. Tyrell keeps humming. Somewhere in the house, footsteps echo. Expensive shoes on expensive floors. They fade without coming closer. The contract folder sits in Tyrell's bag by the door. 23 pages of legal language that all said the same thing in different ways. Don't get attached, don't make changes, don't question the system. He'd signed it because he needed the job. Because 3 months without work meant 3 months closer to eviction. Because agencies don't send people like him to houses like this unless everyone else already said no. But sitting here now, watching 3 boys trapped in a routine designed around their limitations instead of their humanity, he feels the weight of every clause he agreed to. The humming trails off naturally. Silence settles again. The boy with the twitching fingers lifts his hand. Small movement, deliberate. His palm opens toward Tyrell, then closes. Opens, closes. Takes Tyrell a moment to understand. The boy is waving. Heat floods behind Tyrell's eyes. He blinks it back, keeps his face neutral for the cameras, and waves back with the same small, careful gesture. The boy's hand stills, but something in his expression shifts. Not quite a smile. Something quieter. Something that looks like relief. A sharp electronic tone cuts through the room. The intercom crackling to life without warning. The voice that comes through is male. Deep, measured. The kind of voice that doesn't need to raise to carry authority. Remember, they're not yours. The intercom clicks off. The 3 boys don't react. Like they've heard it before. Like they know. Tyrell's hand is still raised in that small wave. Frozen in the air between him and a child who just reached out for the first time probably all day. He lowers it slowly. The cameras watch. The boys wait. And Tyrell realizes with perfect, cold clarity that this job was never about care. It's about containment. What would you do if someone told you not to care about a child who just reached out to you? Drop your answer below, and wait for Chapter 2 to see what Tyrell does next. The alarm goes off at 7:14. Not 7:15 when the schedule says feeding time. 14. Like the extra minute exists to remind everyone that precision matters more than people. Tyrell is already awake. He didn't sleep well in the small room they gave him off the kitchen. Too quiet, too clean. Sheets that smell like they've never been used. He'd lain there listening to the house breathe through its vents and wondering how a place with 3 children in it could feel this lifeless. The intercom crackles. Same female voice from yesterday. Feeding protocol begins in 1 minute. He's already dressed. Already standing. The boy's room looks exactly like he left it last night. Same wheelchair positions. Same triangle formation. But the boys themselves look different. Rumpled from sleep, one with pillow marks on his cheek, another with his curls flattened on one side. Small human details that don't match the room's sterile perfection. The door opens before Tyrell can take 3 steps inside. 2 staff members enter, different from yesterday's nurse. Younger, moving with the kind of synchronized efficiency that comes from doing the same task 500 times. They don't introduce themselves. One pushes a cart with 3 identical bottles. The other carries a tablet that's already lit up with what looks like a feeding schedule broken down by milliliter. "Morning," Tyrell offers. Neither responds. They've already begun, one taking position at the first wheelchair, the other checking vitals on the tablet. The process is mechanical, clinical. The bottle tilts at a predetermined angle. The boy's head is positioned with hands that don't linger, don't soothe, just adjust and move on. Tyrell watches the second boy. His name is Silas according to the chart, though no one's used it out loud yet. His eyes track the bottle approaching, but his body doesn't lean toward it, doesn't show anticipation, just accepts. Does he usually eat slower or faster? Tyrell asks the staff member holding the bottle. He eats at the prescribed rate, right? But does he ever seem hungrier or full before he finishes? The woman, mid-20s, name tag that says J. Morrison, looks at him like he just asked if fish can fly. The formula is calculated to his metabolic needs. He finishes what's provided. She returns to the task. Bottle tilts. Boy drinks. Numbers get entered on the tablet. Tyrell moves to the third boy, Kamari, the one who waved yesterday. His fingers are still this morning, resting on the wheelchair arms. But when Tyrell crouches beside him, those eyes shift. Brief, cautious. "Hey," Tyrell says quietly. "You sleep okay?" Kamari blinks once. Slow, deliberate. Tyrell takes it as communication. The feeding process lasts exactly 8 minutes. Tyrell times it without meaning to, watching the staff work with stopwatch precision. When the last drop is consumed, the bottles disappear onto the cart, the tablet updates, and both staff members exit without a word. The door clicks shut. Tyrell looks at the boys. All 3 have formula at the corners of their mouths. Small traces that the staff either didn't notice or didn't think mattered. He finds tissues near the medical supply cabinet. Approaches slowly. "Gonna clean you up a bit," he says to the room. "That okay?" No response. But no resistance either when he gently wipes Silas's mouth first, then moves to the second boy, Elijah, the one in the middle. Elijah's jaw tightens slightly when Tyrell gets close, a micro-flinch that speaks to touch too often too clinically. "Easy," Tyrell murmurs. "Just getting that off." He's gentler with Kamari. The boy's eyes follow the movement of his hand, watching the tissue approach and retreat. "There," Tyrell says. "Better." Kamari's chest rises and falls, just breathing. But something in the way he settles afterward feels like agreement. The 9:30 alarm catches Tyrell off guard, even though he was expecting it. A physical therapist arrives. Older man, Caribbean accent, kind eyes that don't quite match the rigid routine he implements. He introduces himself as Marcus, which is one more word than anyone else has offered. "You're the new caregiver," Marcus says. Statement, not question. "Yeah, Tyrell." Marcus nods, already moving toward Elijah's wheelchair. "They tell you the protocols?" "Some version of them." "Then you know we don't improvise." Marcus unlocks the wheelchair brakes. This house doesn't do well with improvisation. He's good at his job. Tyrell can see that immediately. His hands know exactly where to support, how much pressure to use, which angles to avoid. But there's a sadness in the way he works, like he's maintaining machinery, not encouraging children. Elijah tolerates the stretches, doesn't fight them, doesn't engage with them either. Does he ever show preferences? Tyrell asks. Like if one stretch feels better than another? Marcus pauses mid-movement, looks at Tyrell with something that might be surprise. "We follow the therapeutic protocol developed by..." "I know," But does he ever react differently? Marcus's hands still on Elijah's leg. For a moment, something crosses his face. Frustration, maybe, or recognition. Then it's gone. The protocol accounts for all variables, he says, but he's gentler with the next stretch. Just slightly, just enough that Tyrell notices. The session ends at 10:15. Marcus leaves with the same quiet efficiency he arrived with, and Tyrell is alone with the boys again. 11 o'clock brings educational enrichment. A woman with an expensive suit and an iPad opens the door. She doesn't enter the room, just props the iPad on a stand facing the wheelchairs and taps the screen. A video begins playing, shapes and colors, and a voice that sounds computer-generated explaining concepts designed for typically developing toddlers. The boys stare at the screen. Not engaged, just looking because it's in front of them. The woman leaves the iPad and exits. Tyrell watches for 30 seconds before he can't anymore. "This is trash," he says to the empty room. He walks to the iPad, pauses the video. Silence drops like a weight. All three boys turn their heads. Small movements, but deliberate. "Yeah," Tyrell says. "I thought so too." He scrolls through the device, finds a music app, pulls up something with actual rhythm. Old Motown, his grandmother's favorite. Not too loud, just present. The room transforms. Not dramatically, not like a movie, but Silas's shoulders drop half an inch. Elijah's breathing evens out. Kamari's fingers start tapping against his wheelchair arm. Arrhythmic at first, then catching the beat. Tyrell settles onto the floor again, letting the music fill the space. He doesn't perform, doesn't make it a lesson, just lets it exist. By the second song, all three boys are oriented toward him instead of the iPad. By the third, Kamari is moving his head. Tiny nods, following the rhythm. Tyrell's chest aches with something he can't name. The intercom crackles. He doesn't hear what it says at first because he's watching Kamari's expression. Watching something like joy try to surface through years of learned stillness. Unauthorized deviation from enrichment protocol. Return to approved materials immediately. Tyrell looks up at the nearest camera. Doesn't hide his face. Doesn't perform compliance. "They're listening," he says clearly. "Isn't that enriching?" The intercom doesn't respond. But 30 seconds later, the door opens. J. Morrison enters with the tablet, face unreadable. "The schedule is not optional," she says. "The schedule is boring," Tyrell replies. "That's not your determination to make." "Whose determination is it?" She stops, blinks, like no one's asked her that before. "The approved protocols are." "I heard about the protocols. I'm asking who decided these specific children need these specific things, because they seem to prefer something else." J. Morrison looks at the boys. All three are still now, heads slightly bowed. Like they know this conversation ends poorly and they're trying to make themselves smaller. Something flickers across her face, but she buries it. "Return to the approved materials," she says, "or I file a report." She leaves before Tyrell can respond. He looks at the boys. They won't meet his eyes now. "It's okay," he tells them, tells himself. It's okay. But his hand is shaking when he reaches for the iPad. He cues up the prescribed video. The computer voice starts explaining shapes again. All three boys go motionless, flat, empty. And Tyrell sits there on the expensive floor of this expensive house, watching three children disappear into themselves, and understands exactly what kind of place this is. The kind where joy is an unapproved deviation. The kind where being human violates protocol. The kind where cameras watch everything except what matters. By 1 o'clock, the boys are returned to their room for afternoon rest protocol. The lights dim automatically. White noise fills the space through hidden speakers. Staff enter to adjust their wheelchairs into reclined positions. No one asks if they're tired. No one checks if they're comfortable. The door closes. The lock clicks softly. Tyrell stands in the hallway outside, staring at that closed door, and feels rage building in his chest like steam in a sealed pot. His phone buzzes. Text from an unknown number. System alert. Protocol deviation documented. Second violation will result in contract termination. He stares at the message until the screen goes dark. Inside the room, through the thick door, he hears nothing. No movement, no sound. Just 3 children learning that reaching out costs more than staying silent. Tyrell's finger hovers over the delete button. But what if trying to help them gets him thrown out before he can do anything at all? Tyrell takes the wrong hallway at 2:17 in the afternoon. He tells himself it's accidental. That he got turned around in a house designed like a hotel, all identical corridors and doors without numbers. But his feet know better. They've been pulling him toward the restricted wing since lunch. Toward the part of the house where staff don't wander and security cameras triple in density. The hallway here is different. Darker wood, better art, the kind of silence that costs extra. He makes it 15 steps before a door opens ahead of him. The man who emerges doesn't look like he was interrupted. Looks like he was waiting. Javante Beaumont. The name was in the contract paperwork, mentioned in whispers by staff, never used directly. He's tall, 6'3" maybe, built like someone who still makes time for the gym despite running an empire. Dark skin, graying beard cropped close, eyes that take inventory without seeming to move. Charcoal suit with no tie, shoes that probably cost more than Tyrell's entire wardrobe. He doesn't smile, doesn't frown, just exists in the doorway, taking up space in a way that makes the hallway feel smaller. Lost? He asks, voice like stones shifting. Tyrell's heart kicks against his ribs. Yeah, sorry, still learning the layout. The boys' wing is east. You're west, right? You changed the music this morning. Not a question. Just observation dropped like a weight between them. Tyrell stops, moving toward the exit. They weren't responding to the video. They're not required to respond. They're required to be exposed to developmental stimuli according to expert recommendations. With respect, they're kids, not experiments. Javante's eyebrow lifts. Quarter inch. Might as well be a shout. You've been here one day. Doesn't take long to see when something's not working. And you have credentials that supersede multiple developmental specialists? Tyrell's jaw tightens. I have eyes that watch how humans react when they're engaged versus when they're being managed. The silence that follows feels thick enough to drown in. Javante doesn't move from the doorway, doesn't blink. Just watches with the kind of attention that Tyrell recognizes from the cameras, assessing threat level, calculating risk, deciding. Then Javante steps aside. Come in. It's not an invitation. It's something else. Test maybe. Trap possibly. Tyrell walks through the door anyway. The office is exactly what he expected and nothing like it. Money everywhere, leather furniture, a desk that looks carved from a single tree, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking grounds too green to be natural. But papers scattered across surfaces. Coffee cups multiplied on the side table. A tablet on the couch showing medical charts. This isn't a showroom. It's where someone actually works, actually lives. Sit if you want, Javante says, moving toward the window. He doesn't sit himself, just stands with his hands in his pockets, silhouetted against daylight. Tyrell stays standing. I reviewed your file, Javante continues, before you were hired. What's left of it, anyway? Tyrell's stomach drops. What does that mean? Means whoever scrubbed your professional history did a thorough job. Certifications disappeared. References unreachable. Employment gaps explained with bureaucratic language that says nothing. But gaps like that usually mean someone powerful wanted you invisible. If you knew that, why hire me? Javante turns from the window. Because everyone else sent by the agency lasted less than a week. They followed protocols perfectly. The boys deteriorated anyway. So I tried a different variable. I'm a variable? You're someone they can't threaten with a career you don't have. The honesty hits like cold water. Tyrell crosses his arms. That's a hell of an interview process. I don't do interviews. I do risk assessment. You're here because you're either incompetent or impossible to control. Either way, you'll reveal something. About whether the protocols are helping or just making everyone feel better about doing nothing. Tyrell stares at this man, this alpha who built empires and installed cameras and hired him like a canary in a coal mine. You could just ask the boys what they need. They're nonverbal. They communicate just fine if you know how to listen. Javante goes still. Actually still. The kind that precedes movement or violence. What did they tell you? He asks quietly. That they're bored. That they're capable of preferences. That they respond to music and tone and being treated like humans instead of case files. In one day, in 3 hours, Javante walks to the desk, taps the tablet screen. Security footage fills the display, the boys' room, multiple angles. He scrolls back to this morning, finds the moment Tyrell changed the music. They watch together in silence. Kamari's fingers tapping, Silas's shoulders dropping, Elijah's breathing evening out. That's not in their charts, Javante says. Because whoever made the charts wasn't measuring the right things. Javante keeps watching the footage. His jaw works like he's chewing something bitter. The protocols were designed by the best pediatric rehabilitation specialists in the state, he says. Implemented by staff with decades of experience. Supervised by medical professionals who've published research. You're telling me they missed something fundamental? I'm telling you systems optimize for data collection, not humanity. The words land harder than Tyrell meant them to. Javante's hand stills on the tablet. You know something about systems, he says. Not a question. Enough. Enough to get erased from your own profession. Tyrell's throat tightens. He doesn't confirm, doesn't deny, just holds eye contact until Javante looks away first. The cameras, Tyrell says. You watch constantly? I review footage. When alerts trigger. Alerts for what? Deviations. From protocol. From pattern. Tyrell processes that. You're looking for something specific. Javante doesn't answer. Just advances the footage to afternoon rest protocol. Watches staff position the boys' wheelchairs. Watches the lights dim and the door close. They used to fight sleep, he says quietly. When they first came home from the hospital. Used to cry. Make sounds. Resist. Used to. Haven't in 8 months. The statement sits between them like evidence. Like confession. You think that's progress? Tyrell asks. I think that's learned helplessness, Javante replies. And I don't know how to fix it without dismantling everything that's supposed to keep them safe. For the first time since entering the office, Tyrell sees past the control and money and power. Sees something raw underneath. Something that looks like drowning while everyone applauds your swimming technique. What happened to them? Tyrell asks. Before the paralysis. Javante's shoulders tighten. Rehabilitation trial. Experimental. Promising results in initial studies. We were told it was safe. But it wasn't. It destroyed their motor function. Permanently. The program shut down. Records sealed. Families compensated into silence. He looks directly at Tyrell. You testified against that program. The air leaves Tyrell's lungs. That's why your file is empty, Javante continues. That's why agencies blacklisted you. That's why you're working a contract job in a house with more cameras than a prison. You stood up against the people who did this to my sons. They buried you for it. Tyrell can't breathe. Can't move. The room tilts. You didn't know, he manages. Not until yesterday. Not until my investigator found sealed testimony with your name in it. Then why am I still here? Javante sets the tablet down. Looks at Tyrell with something that isn't quite gratitude and isn't quite guilt. Because you're the only person in this house who sees them as children instead of consequences. The words break something in Tyrell's chest. He turns away, staring at the bookshelves without seeing them, trying to sort through the revelation that he's been hired to care for the exact children the system destroyed him for trying to protect. You don't work like the others, Javante says. Tyrell laughs, comes out hollow. That's what got me erased the first time. Maybe, But it's also why they reached out to you in 3 hours when they haven't reached out to anyone in 8 months. Tyrell closes his eyes, thinks about Kamari waving, about Silas's shoulders dropping when music played, about Elijah's breathing changing when someone finally listened. If they find out I'm still here, they won't. My investigator is discreet. My house is private. And everyone who matters thinks you're nobody. I am nobody. No. Javante moves closer, not threatening, just present. You're someone who chose truth over a career. That's not nobody. That's dangerous. Dangerous to who, exactly? And what happens when the very system that destroyed Tyrell once discovers he's back? The shift happens without announcement. Tyrell notices it the next morning when he enters the boys' room and finds Javante already there. Not standing at a distance. Sitting on the floor between wheelchairs, tablet in his lap, watching his sons like he's trying to memorize something he forgot. He doesn't look up when Tyrell enters. Just keeps staring at Kamari, who's staring at the window where early light cuts geometric shapes across the floor. He used to love patterns, Javante says. Before, would spend hours lining up toys by color, by size. Staff said it was concerning. I thought it was just how his brain worked. Tyrell closes the door quietly, doesn't interrupt. Now he can't organize anything, can't move his hands enough to arrange objects. But he still tracks patterns, watches them. Javante's voice drops. I never asked if that frustrates him, if he misses it. You could ask now. Javante looks up. He's nonverbal. Doesn't mean he can't answer. Tyrell moves to Kamari's wheelchair, crouches beside it. Hey, your dad's wondering if you miss organizing things. If you do, blink twice. Kamari's eyes shift to Tyrell. Hold there for 3 seconds. Then blink. Once, twice. Deliberate as punctuation. Javante's breath catches audibly. He can... The words stick. He tries again. They told me he couldn't communicate preference. That the brain damage was too extensive for. They measured the wrong things, Tyrell says quietly. Tested for speech, for motor control, not for comprehension, not for desire. Javante stands slowly, walks to Kamari's other side. His hand hovers near his son's face like he's forgotten how to touch him. Can you hear me? He asks, voice cracking on the edges. Kamari blinks twice. Javante makes a sound that's not quite a sob. Drops to his knees beside the wheelchair. His hand finally lands, gentle on Kamari's shoulder, then moving to cup his face with a tenderness that doesn't match anything else about him. I'm so sorry, he whispers. I'm so sorry I stopped asking. Kamari's eyes fill. Tears track down his cheeks slow and silent. And Tyrell has to turn away because the intimacy of it feels sacred and terrible at once. A father discovering his son exists after months of treating him like a ghost. The morning routine changes after that. Not officially. The schedule still runs. Alarms still trigger. Staff still arrive with their tablets and protocols. But Javante is present now. Not hovering. Just there. Watching how Tyrell adapts each task into something that includes the boys instead of happening to them. During feeding, Tyrell shows him how Silas's throat works better when the bottle is tilted 15 degrees left. How Elijah drinks faster when someone hums. How Kamari needs 30 seconds between swallows or he gags. The staff should know this, Javante says. The staff knows how to document completion. That's different. Marcus arrives at 9:30 for physical therapy. Finds Javante sitting in the room, legs crossed, notepad in his lap. Mr. Beaumont, Marcus says carefully, I didn't know you'd be observing today. I'm not observing. I'm learning. Marcus's eyebrows rise, but he doesn't comment. Just begins the session. Unlocking Elijah's wheelchair, positioning himself for the first stretch. Why that angle? Javante asks. Marcus pauses. It's the protocol angle. 45 degrees for... I know what the protocol says. I'm asking why. What happens if you adjust it? I don't know. The protocol is designed by... Try 50 degrees. Marcus looks at Tyrell. Tyrell nods. The adjustment is small, almost nothing, but Elijah's leg extends easier. His breath doesn't hitch the way it usually does. "Ha," Marcus says, then again quieter. "Ha." He continues the session differently, still following structure, but allowing micro-adjustments, watching Elijah's responses instead of just executing movements. By the end, Elijah looks tired but not pained, engaged but not overwhelmed. Marcus packs his equipment slowly. "You know they'll file a report if I document this deviation." "Let them," Javante says. "Mr. Beaumont, if the protocol can't adapt to my sons, the protocol is wrong." Marcus leaves shaking his head, but there's something like relief in his expression. The afternoon brings Javante's first real question. They're alone with the boys during rest protocol. Lights dimmed, white noise humming. The staff finished positioning wheelchairs and left. Tyrell expects Javante to leave too. He doesn't. "Tell me what you testified," Javante says. "In the trial." Tyrell's stomach tightens. "It's sealed. Seals can be opened. Not without consequences." "There are already consequences." Javante gestures to his sons. "I'm living with them." Tyrell sits against the wall. Lets silence stretch while he decides how much truth to give. "The trial wasn't about curing paralysis," he finally says. "It was about proving a technique worked so pharmaceutical companies could license it. Kids were enrolled without informed consent. Parents were told it was cutting-edge therapy. Really, it was data collection with human subjects. And you worked there?" "As a care specialist, I was supposed to document progress, record improvements, feed data into the research reports. But kids weren't improving. They were regressing, developing seizures, losing functions they had before treatment. And when I documented that, when I showed supervisors what was happening, I was told to adjust my observations, make them more positive, frame deterioration as temporary adjustment periods." Javante's jaw works. "You refused. I reported it. To medical boards, to ethics committees, to anyone who would listen." Tyrell's laugh is bitter. "Turns out nobody wanted to listen. Too much money involved. Too many reputations at stake. So they buried the investigation, sealed the trial records, and made sure I couldn't work in pediatric care again. They destroyed your career to hide what they did. They destroyed my career to protect their investment." Javante stands abruptly, walks to the window. His hands curl into fists at his sides. "I signed them up," he says, voice flat. "Read the brochures. Talk to specialists. Believed every word they said about breakthrough treatments and hope and progress. I wanted so badly for them to walk again that I didn't question whether the people offering miracles had proven they could deliver. You were a parent trying to help your kids. I was an alpha with resources who should have investigated more carefully. Who should have protected them better. You didn't paralyze them. No, but I handed them to people who did." The guilt in his voice is so raw it hurts to hear. Tyrell watches this man, this powerful, controlled alpha, come apart at the seams over choices made with love and exploited by greed. "They're still here," Tyrell says quietly. "Still yours. Still worth every effort." Javante turns from the window. His eyes are red-rimmed. "Do you know how many times I've watched the footage from the day they came home? Trying to see the exact moment they stopped fighting. The exact moment they learned it was safer to comply than resist. Why? Because if I can find that moment, maybe I can reverse it. Maybe I can teach them it's safe to want things again." Tyrell stands, moves to the center of the room where 3 boys sleep under chemical white light and mechanical noise. "You're here now," he says. "That's the reversal. Showing up, asking questions, letting them know you're listening even when they can't speak." Javante approaches Kamari's wheelchair, watches his son's chest rise and fall, reaches out and rests his hand on Kamari's curls with infinite gentleness. "I hired you to reveal what wasn't working," he says. "I didn't expect you to reveal me. Maybe that's the same thing. They stand there in the dimmed light while outside the door, the house continues its mechanical routines. Staff move through corridors. Alarms trigger on schedule. The system functions exactly as designed. But inside this room, something new grows. Small, fragile, dangerous as truth. The evening intercom startles them both. Jay. Morrison's voice crackles through. Mr. Beaumont, you have a call holding. Priority level. Javante doesn't move toward the intercom. Doesn't acknowledge it. Mr. Beaumont? She repeats. Tell them I'm unavailable. Silence. Then, it's the rehabilitation board. They say it's urgent regarding. I said I'm unavailable. The intercom cuts off. Tyrell watches Javante's expression harden. Watches the alpha rebuild his walls in real time. They know you're asking questions, Tyrell says. Let them know. If they think you're preparing a lawsuit, then they'll try to silence us both. Again, Javante meets Tyrell's eyes. But this time I have resources. Lawyers. Investigators. Things you didn't have. You also have a reputation. Company. An empire built on relationships with the same people who covered this up. I'm aware of what I have. Are you aware of what you'll lose? The question hangs between them. Heavy. Clarifying. Javante looks at his sons. All three sleeping. Small bodies maintained by protocols designed by people who profited from their suffering. Yes, he says. And I'm aware of what they've already lost. He heads for the door. Pauses with his hand on the handle. Stay beyond your contract hours tonight, he says. If you're willing. Why? Because I need to make some calls. And I need to know someone is here who sees them as more than data. He leaves before Tyrell can respond. The room settles back into artificial quiet. White noise. Regulated temperature. Scheduled sleep. Tyrell sits against the wall. Watches three boys breathe. Thinks about systems and silence and the cost of speaking up twice. His phone buzzes. Text from unknown number. Staff filed formal complaints regarding protocol deviations. Meeting scheduled tomorrow 9 a.m. He stares at the message. Thinks about Kamari blinking twice. About Elijah's breathing changing. About Silas responding to music for the first time in months. Thinks about the last time he chose children over compliance. But what if choosing them again means losing the only chance he has to help them? The meeting room is too cold. Tyrell notices it the moment he walks in. Air conditioning cranked to a temperature meant to keep people uncomfortable. Keep them focused. Keep them aware they're not in control of the space. 6 people sit around the conference table. Tyrell recognizes Jay. Morrison and the woman from Educational Enrichment. The others introduce themselves with titles that sound important and interchangeable. Director of Care Standards, Head of Medical Oversight, something about regulatory compliance. Javante isn't here. Mr. Hayes, the Director of Care Standards, begins. She's maybe 60, silver hair pulled back, glasses that she peers over instead of through. You've been employed here for 4 days. In that time, you've accumulated 7 documented protocol deviations. 7 seems low, Tyrell says. The room temperature drops another degree. This is a formal review, the woman continues, not a discussion. The deviations include unauthorized changes to educational materials, unapproved physical therapy adjustments, undocumented feeding modifications, and improper emotional engagement with clients. Clients? She blinks. I'm sorry, you said clients. They're children. They are dependents under specialized care protocols developed by... I know who developed the protocols. I'm asking why you're calling children clients. Like they're business transactions instead of humans. Jay. Morrison shifts uncomfortably. The compliance officer, a thin man with a tablet, types something rapidly. Mr. Hayes, the director says, voice carefully measured. Your personal philosophy regarding care terminology is not the subject of this meeting. What is subject to review is your repeated failure to follow established guidelines that ensure optimal outcomes for. The guidelines aren't producing optimal outcomes. That's not your assessment to make. I have eyes. I have ears. I watch 3 boys respond positively to minor adjustments that protocols don't account for. That seems relevant. The educational enrichment woman leans forward. The boy's developmental trajectory is tracked through standardized metrics. Those metrics show consistent progress within expected parameters. What parameters? Compliance? Stillness? Not making staff uncomfortable. Mr. Hayes. No. Tyrell stands. Doesn't mean to, but his body won't stay seated. I've been in this field long enough to know what expected parameters means. It means we've decided what these kids should be instead of asking who they are. It means we're measuring our convenience instead of their well-being. The director removes her glasses. You're not in this field, Mr. Hayes. You were removed from it. Your credentials were revoked. Your professional opinion has no standing. The words land like punches. Precise. Meant to hurt. Then why hire me? Tyrell asks quietly. We didn't. Mr. Beaumont did. Against our recommendation. And you're documenting deviations to prove that recommendation was correct. Silence. The kind that confirms everything. The compliance officer stops typing. The boy's welfare is our primary concern. When untrained caregivers implement unapproved techniques, they risk undoing months of specialized progress. What progress? Specifically, their vital signs have stabilized. Their daily routines are consistent. They demonstrate decreased resistance to care procedures. Decreased resistance, Tyrell repeats. You mean learned helplessness. We mean they've adapted successfully to their care environment. They've learned that fighting doesn't change anything. That's not adaptation. That's surrender. The director stands now. This meeting is concluded. Mr. Hayes, you are on probationary status. One more deviation and your contract is terminated. Documentation of your performance will be submitted to Mr. Beaumont with our recommendation for immediate replacement. Does he know about this meeting? Mr. Beaumont is briefed on all personnel matters. That's not what I asked. The director's jaw tightens. She gathers her papers. You're dismissed. Tyrell doesn't move. Looks at each person around the table. Sees exactly what they are. Gatekeepers protecting systems that protect themselves. Just tell me one thing, he says. Do any of you actually spend time with them? Not doing procedures. Not documenting metrics. Just being with them. No one answers. Tyrell leaves. The boy's room is empty when he returns. Note on the door says they're at a scheduled medical consultation. Off-site. Won't return until after 2. Tyrell sits on the floor where he usually sits. Stares at 3 empty wheelchairs positioned in their perfect triangle. His phone rings. Javante. They ambushed you, Javante says. No greeting. You knew they would. I suspected. I was in depositions or I would have been there. They documented 7 deviations. I've seen the list. They're calling empathy deviations. Calling attention to my son's humanity a protocol violation. They want me gone. I know. Tyrell closes his eyes. You should probably let them do it. Why would I do that? Because keeping me here paints a target. On you. On the boys. These people, they buried me once. They'll do worse to protect themselves a second time. Let them try. Javante. They paralyzed my children for profit. Then taught my children to accept it silently. Then convinced me that silence meant healing. His voice shakes. I'm done letting them try anything. You'll lose everything. I've already lost everything that matters. Now I'm trying to get some of it back. The line goes quiet. Not dead. Just waiting. What do you need from me? Tyrell asks. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Keep showing me who my sons are. Keep documenting what they respond to. And when the system pushes back, because it will, stand there anyway. That's what got me erased. That's what made you worth finding. Tyrell hears footsteps in the hallway. Multiple sets. Staff returning with the boys. I have to go, he says. Tyrell. Javante's voice drops. They're going to come at you harder. They're going to try to prove you're dangerous, unstable, that everything you testified before was fabricated. I know. And you're staying anyway? Tyrell looks at the empty wheelchairs, thinks about Kamari waving, about Silas's shoulders dropping, about Elijah's breathing evening out when someone finally listened. Yeah, he says, I'm staying anyway. The door opens. 3 wheelchairs roll in, positioned by staff who don't make eye contact. The boys look tired. Kamari has red marks on his arm where someone drew blood. Elijah is slumped slightly to the left like no one adjusted him properly during transport. Silas is crying, silently, tears running down his face while his body stays motionless. The staff deposits them in their usual spots and leaves. Tyrell goes to Silas first, kneels beside the wheelchair. Hey, what happened? Silas can't answer. Can't point to what hurts. Can't explain what scared him. Just cries in that terrible quiet way. The way children cry when they've learned no one comes when they make noise. I'm here, Tyrell says. Gentle. Certain. You're home now. You're safe. He finds tissues. Wipes Silas's face. Doesn't rush. Doesn't shush. Just stays present while the crying winds down to exhausted breathing. Then he checks Elijah, repositions him properly, makes sure nothing's pinching. Moves to Kamari last. The needle mark on his arm is bruising already. Tyrell touches it carefully, checking for swelling. Kamari's eyes meet his. Blink twice. I know, Tyrell says. I know it hurts. I'm sorry. He settles onto the floor between their wheelchairs, pulls out his phone, finds music. Something soft, something his grandmother played when he was small and scared. Lets it fill the space. Gradually, the boy's breathing evens. Silas stops shaking. Elijah's shoulders drop. Kamari's eyes close, but his face turns toward the music. Tyrell doesn't move, doesn't check the time, just sits there being present while 3 children who've learned that comfort is conditional slowly remember what it feels like to be safe. His phone buzzes. Email notification. Subject line. Final warning. Contract violation. He doesn't open it. The music plays. The boys breathe. And somewhere in the house's mechanical systems, cameras record everything. Evidence being collected, reports being filed, systems protecting themselves with the efficiency they were designed for. But when the system decides you're the problem, can anyone protect you from becoming its next victim? The security badge stops working at 6:43 in the morning. Tyrell stands at the service entrance, swiping the card through the reader for the 4th time. Red light. Denied access. He checks his phone, no messages, no alerts. Just the card suddenly dead in his hand like someone flipped a switch. The door opens from inside. J. Morrison stands there with 2 men in dark suits. Not security. Something else. Legal maybe. Corporate. Mr. Hayes, she says. You need to come with us. I need to check on the boys. That's no longer your responsibility. His stomach drops. What are you talking about? One of the suits steps forward. Your contract has been terminated effective immediately. Violation of care standards, breach of protocol agreements, and conduct deemed detrimental to client welfare. Let me see Javante. Mr. Beaumont is not available. Then I'll wait. You'll leave the premises or we'll have you escorted by police. Tyrell looks past them into the hallway. Empty. Silent. Somewhere deeper in the house, 3 boys are waking up to routines administered by people who've already proven they care more about documentation than humans. What they need is professional care from qualified staff. J. Morrison interrupts. Not experimental techniques from someone with a revoked license. The words are rehearsed, prepared. This didn't just happen this morning. This was planned. Does Javante know? Tyrell asks again. Neither suit answers. J. Morrison's expression stays neutral. Tyrell's phone buzzes. Text from Javante. Don't leave. I'm handling this. He shows the screen to J. Morrison. He wants me to stay. Mr. Beaumont's personal wishes don't supersede institutional care requirements. The medical board has issued recommendations. We're implementing them. What medical board? The one overseeing the boys' ongoing treatment. They've reviewed your conduct and determined it poses risk to therapeutic progress. Tyrell's blood goes cold. The same board that approved the trial. The same people who buried the evidence. They're not protecting the boys. They're protecting themselves. I'm not leaving without talking to him, Tyrell says. The suits move closer. Sir, you need to exit voluntarily or a door slams somewhere in the house. Footsteps rapid on marble floors. Javante rounds the corner still in yesterday's clothes. Phone pressed to his ear, face set in stone. Stand down, he says to the suits. Not loud, just absolute. They hesitate. Jay. Morrison opens her mouth. Stand down or you're terminated. Javante repeats, ends his phone call, looks at Tyrell. You okay? They said my contract's terminated. It's not. I'm the one who signs contracts here. Jay. Morrison steps forward. Mr. Beaumont, the medical board's recommendations are legally binding. If you continue employing Mr. Hayes against their directive, you risk losing custody rights during the ongoing evaluation. The silence that follows could crack glass. What evaluation? Javante asks quietly. The board has concerns about the boys' home care environment. They've opened an investigation into whether current arrangements meet therapeutic standards. Keeping Mr. Hayes on staff would be considered non-compliance. Tyrell watches Javante's face, watches him calculate. The board has leverage. The same board that destroyed evidence, buried testimony, paid families into silence. They're threatening to take his sons if he doesn't comply. How long have you known about this investigation? Javante asks. The board contacted us 3 days ago. And you didn't tell me. We were instructed to document conditions before informing you. Standard procedure for welfare evaluations. Javante looks at Tyrell. Something passes between them, understanding, maybe, or recognition. The system showing its teeth. Leave, Javante says. Tyrell's chest tightens. What? Take a few days. Let me handle this legally. If you're here, they'll use it against the boys. They'll use everything against the boys anyway. I know. But I need time to dismantle their leverage without giving them ammunition. Javante's voice cracks slightly. Please, trust me. Tyrell wants to argue, wants to refuse. But he sees the calculation in Javante's eyes, the same calculation he made years ago when he chose testimony over career. Sometimes fighting means stepping back so the real battle can begin. The boys will be told you're on leave, not gone. On leave. Tyrell nods, doesn't trust his voice. He walks toward the exit. Passes Jay. Morrison without looking at her. Passes the suits. Reaches the door and stops. 3 days, he says to Javante. Then I'm coming back whether they like it or not. Javante almost smiles. I'm counting on it. The door closes behind Tyrell. Locks with a click that sounds permanent. He stands in the driveway watching the house. Somewhere inside, 3 boys are waking up without him. Learning again that people leave. That reaching out costs more than staying silent. His phone buzzes. Email from an unknown sender. Subject, you were warned. He opens it. Single line of text. The boys are regressing. Just like last time. This is on you. What happens when the very people who hurt children threaten to take them away from the one man trying to make things right? Subscribe and turn on notifications. Chapter 7 reveals the truth they tried to bury. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters in stories like this. The subpoena arrives by courier at 9:26. Tyrell stands in his apartment. 1 room, peeling paint, radiator that clanks through the night, staring at legal documents that weigh more than paper should. He's being called to testify, not in criminal court. Something worse. Family court. Custody evaluation hearing for Javante Beaumont's parental rights. He reads it twice before the words make sense. They're not investigating the boys' care. They're investigating Javante, claiming his judgment is compromised. That hiring Tyrell proves he's unstable, willing to risk his children's welfare for personal vendetta against the medical establishment. His phone rings. Unknown number. He almost doesn't answer. Mr. Hayes. Male voice. Older. Careful. My name is Kendrick Osei. I'm Mr. Beaumont's attorney. We need to talk. They meet in a coffee shop 3 blocks from Tyrell's apartment. Kendrick is 60-something, dark skin, gray suit, eyes that miss nothing. He orders black coffee and gets straight to it. The board is building a case that Javante is emotionally unfit. They're using your employment as evidence that he's acting irrationally, hiring discredited staff, implementing unapproved care methods. They want the boys placed in a medical facility under board supervision. Tyrell's hands tighten around his cup. A facility run by the same people who paralyzed them. Effectively, yes. That's not about care. That's about silence. I know, but proving that requires evidence. Documentation. Testimony that can't be discredited. Kendrick leans forward. The sealed trial records from your original testimony? Do you have copies? No. Everything was confiscated. My notes, recordings, patient files. They scrubbed it clean. What about memory? Could you recreate what you documented? Tyrell closes his eyes, sees it all again. The children seizing. Parents being told it was normal adjustment. Data being altered in reports. Supervisors ordering him to change his observations or face termination. Yeah, he says. I remember all of it. Then we put you on the stand. Let you testify again. Force them to address the original trial publicly. They buried me once for that. They'll do worse this time. Maybe, but now you're not alone. Javante has resources. I have connections. And the boys have a father who won't stop fighting. Tyrell stares into his coffee, thinks about Kamari waving, about Silas crying silently, about Elijah breathing easier when someone finally listened. What do I need to do? He asks. Tell the truth, exactly as it happened. Don't soften it. Don't dramatize it. Just state facts. Kendrick slides a folder across the table. I've compiled what public records exist. Names of other families involved. Children who were in the trial. Most settled quietly, signed non-disclosure agreements. But 3 families never signed. Their cases are still technically open. Tyrell opens the folder, sees names he recognizes, faces he remembers, children he couldn't save. If we contact them, they might testify, corroborate your account, break the board's narrative that you're a disgruntled employee making false accusations. Or they might be too scared to speak up. True, but scared people sometimes find courage when they realize they're not alone. Kendrick's phone buzzes. He checks it, jaw tightening. The hearing is in 4 days. Judge Marissa Chin. She has reputation for following protocol strictly. The board will present their case first. Documentation of the boys' current care, testimony from staff, expert opinions about home environment risks. Then we present ours. Which is that the boys aren't regressing because of you. They're responding. And the system is calling that regression because response means they're not compliant anymore. The words land like truth. Heavy. Clear. Javante wants to see you, Kendrick adds. Tonight. His house. The board is watching, but they can't stop him from meeting his own legal team on his property. I'm legal team now? You're the key witness. That makes you whatever we need you to be. They finish coffee in silence. Outside, the city moves through its routines. People working, living, unaware that 3 children's futures are being decided in conference rooms and courtrooms by people who've never asked them what they need. Tyrell returns to his apartment, opens the folder again, studies the names. 3 families who never settled. 3 sets of parents who might still be angry enough to speak. He starts making calls. The first 2 numbers are disconnected. The third rings 4 times before a woman answers. Hello, Mrs. Chan? My name is Tyrell Hayes. I worked at the rehabilitation trial where your daughter was treated. I'm testifying in a custody case and I'm hoping. Don't call here again. Her voice shakes. We can't help you. I understand you're scared, but You don't understand anything. They destroyed you and walked away. What do you think they'll do to us if we talk? They're trying to take 3 children away from their father, the same children they paralyzed. If we don't speak up, those children aren't my problem. My daughter is, and she's finally stable, finally safe. I won't risk that. The line goes dead. Tyrell sits in the silence of his apartment, stares at the remaining names, knows he'll call them anyway, knows most will say no, knows he'll testify regardless, because some battles aren't about winning. They're about making sure the truth gets spoken out loud at least once. When the system threatens to erase children who've already been erased once, who's left to fight? Subscribe and turn on notifications. Chapter 8 brings the courtroom confrontation they tried to prevent. Comment below. Would you risk everything to save someone else's child? Your courage inspires others. The courtroom is smaller than expected. No jury box, no gallery packed with observers. Just wood paneling, fluorescent lights, and a judge's bench that looks down on everyone with the same impartial elevation. Judge Chun sits reviewing documents, reading glasses perched on her nose, expression giving nothing away. Tyrell sits beside Kendrick at the defendant's table. Javante is 2 seats over, suit perfect, hands folded, but his leg bounces under the table. The only tell that he's human under the control. Across the aisle, the board's legal team looks expensive. 3 attorneys in matching navy suits. Behind them sits Dr. Vanessa Kimball, director of the Rehabilitation Board, silver hair, kind face that's appeared in medical journals and fundraising brochures. She looks like someone's grandmother, like compassion in human form. Tyrell knows better. Judge Chin looks up. We're here regarding custody evaluation for minors Kamari, Silas, and Elijah Beaumont. The board has raised concerns about home care standards. Let's proceed. The board's lead attorney stands. Woman named Patricia something, voice smooth as money. Your Honor, we're not questioning Mr. Beaumont's love for his children. We're questioning his judgment. Specifically, his decision to employ Tyrell Hayes, a former care specialist whose license was revoked, whose testimony in a prior case was found unreliable, and whose recent conduct has directly correlated with the boy's documented regression. She presents charts, data points showing increased agitation, disrupted sleep patterns, elevated stress markers, all coinciding with Tyrell's employment dates. The boys were stable before Mr. Hayes arrived. They're destabilizing now. This isn't opinion. It's measurable decline. Kendrick doesn't object, just takes notes. J. Morrison testifies next, describes protocol deviations, unauthorized changes, emotional manipulation. She uses clinical language, making empathy sound like malpractice. The boys require structured consistency. Mr. Hayes provided chaos disguised as compassion. Then Dr. Kimball takes the stand. She speaks about the boys' needs with practiced concern, references their medical history without mentioning the trial that caused it, explains how fragile their progress is, how easily disrupted by inconsistent care. These children deserve stability, professionally managed treatment, not experimental approaches from unqualified individuals pursuing personal agendas. She looks directly at Tyrell when she says it, her expression gentle, pitying even. Patricia rests their case. Judge Chun turns to Kendrick. Your response? Kendrick stands, buttons his jacket. Your Honor, the board claims the boys are regressing. We'd like to define what they mean by that term. He calls his first witness, Marcus, the physical therapist. Marcus takes the stand looking uncomfortable. Patricia objects immediately, claims he's employed by Javante, therefore biased. Judge Chun allows it with a warning. Mr. Laurent, Kendrick begins, you've worked with the Beaumont boys for 11 months. Have you noticed changes since Mr. Hayes arrived? Yes. Negative changes? Marcus hesitates. Depends what you measure. Explain. Their physical responses are the same. Paralysis doesn't change. But their engagement changed. Elijah started tracking movements during therapy instead of staring at nothing. Silas's breathing regulated when someone spoke calmly. Kamari showed clear preference responses, blinking to communicate yes or no. And this is regression? No. This is them being less compliant and more present. Patricia cross-examines hard, forces Marcus to admit he deviated from approved protocols, makes it sound reckless, but the seed is planted. Kendrick calls Tyrell next. The walk to the witness stand feels long. Tyrell sits, gets sworn in, meets Javante's eyes briefly, sees trust there and terror. Kendrick starts gentle. Mr. Hayes, tell us about your first day with the boys. Tyrell describes it. The wheelchairs positioned like furniture. The silence. The cameras. The way Kamari waved and a voice through the intercom said, "Remember, they're not yours." What did that tell you? Kendrick asks. That someone was more afraid of attachment than interested in care. Patricia objects. Judge Chin allows it. Kendrick continues. You were previously employed at a pediatric rehabilitation trial. The same trial where the Beaumont boys were treated. Tell us what you observed there. This is it. The moment that matters. Tyrell takes a breath. Looks at Dr. Kimball sitting in the gallery with her kind face and her clean hands. Children were being harmed. Systematically. Treatments that caused seizures, motor function loss, cognitive decline. When I documented it, I was told to alter my reports. Make the data look better. Frame suffering as progress. And when you refused, they revoked my license. Sealed the trial records. Made sure I couldn't work again. Patricia stands. Your Honor, this is irrelevant ancient history. It's the same board, Tyrell says, looking at the judge now. The same people who buried evidence then are trying to take these children now. Not because they're unsafe with their father. Because they're starting to respond like humans instead of subjects. And that's dangerous to people who profit from compliance. The courtroom goes silent. Dr. Kimball's face doesn't change. Still kind. Still grandmotherly. But her hands tighten on her purse. Patricia cross-examines like a surgical strike. Brings up every inconsistency in Tyrell's old testimony. Every gap in documentation. Makes him sound unreliable, bitter, vendetta-driven. Isn't it true you blame the board for your career failure? I blame them for paralyzing children and calling it medicine. You have no proof of that. I have 3 boys in wheelchairs who were fine before your trial. Judge Chin calls recess. They break. Tyrell sits in the hallway while Kendrick makes calls and Javante paces. An hour passes. Then 2. When they return, Judge Chin has more documents in front of her. I've reviewed sealed records from the original trial, she says. Medical board objected. I overruled. What I found is concerning. Patricia goes pale. Mr. Hayes' testimony was accurate. Treatment protocols were experimental. Consent was inadequate. And when problems emerged, data was altered. Judge Chun looks at Dr. Kimball. You signed those reports. Dr. Kimball doesn't flinch. We followed all regulatory standards at the time. You followed standards designed to protect institutions, not children. The room holds its breath. However, Judge Chun continues. This hearing is about current custody, not past malpractice. Mr. Beaumont, do you intend to keep Mr. Hayes employed? Javante stands. Yes, Your Honor. Then I'm ordering supervised evaluation. Mr. Hayes may continue working under medical oversight. If the boys show genuine decline, we revisit custody. If they show improvement, this board's involvement ends. Patricia starts objecting. Judge Chin cuts her off. This court is adjourned. Justice delayed isn't justice denied, but it's not victory either. Subscribe and turn on notifications for Chapter 9 to see what truth costs when the cameras are still watching. Drop a comment. What would you sacrifice to protect a child? Your story might save someone else. The house feels different when Tyrell returns. Quieter, heavier, like the walls absorb tension and won't let it go. Staff avoid eye contact when he walks through hallways. J. Morrison is nowhere visible. The cameras track him with mechanical precision, evidence collection, not security. The boys' room door is closed. Tyrell knocks, waits, hears nothing. He opens it anyway. 3 wheelchairs in their triangle. 3 boys motionless. But something's wrong. Their positioning is off by inches. Their heads angled differently. Their hands placed with less care than before. Kamari sees him first. His eyes widen. Then tears start, silent, streaming, unstoppable. "Hey," Tyrell says. Drops to his knees beside the wheelchair. "I'm here. I came back." Kamari blinks rapidly. Not communication, just crying. Silas makes a sound. Small, broken. The first vocalization Tyrell has heard from him. Elijah stares straight ahead. Blank. Shut down. "What happened?" Tyrell asks, knowing they can't answer. Asking anyway. He checks them over. No visible injuries. Vitals stable according to wheelchair monitors. But something happened in the 5 days he was gone. Something that taught them again that people leave and don't come back. Footsteps behind him. Javante enters, moving slowly, looking like he's aged years and days. "They were perfect," he says, voice hollow. "Staff said they were perfect. No resistance, no agitation, perfect compliance." "That's not perfect. That's shutdown." "I know. I watched the footage. They just stopped. Stopped tracking movement. Stopped responding to anything. Became exactly what the protocols wanted them to be." Javante sits heavily in the chair near the window. His empire is crumbling quietly. Not in headlines, but in contracts being pulled, partnerships dissolving, foundation boards requesting his resignation. The price of challenging the system isn't one dramatic loss. It's 1,000 small cuts. "My company is under investigation," he says. "Someone leaked documents suggesting financial impropriety. Nothing illegal, just enough to raise questions, tank stock prices, make investors nervous. The board, their connections, they don't need to destroy me directly. They just need to make me expensive to support. Then people abandon you to protect themselves." Tyrell turns back to the boys, starts humming. The same song his grandmother sang. Low, steady, present. Silas's breathing changes first. Deeper, less rapid. Kamari's tears slow. Elijah blinks. Small movement, but movement. "They're not gone," Tyrell says quietly. "They're hiding, but they're still there." Javante watches his sons. "I'm losing everything I built. Companies, reputation, relationships with people who helped me get here. All disappearing because I chose truth over business." "Sounds familiar. You lost everything twice. How do you keep going?" Tyrell thinks about that. About years in a one-room apartment. About credentials revoked. About watching children suffer while powerful people rewrote reality. "Because some things matter more than having everything," he says. Like 3 boys who deserve someone willing to lose for them, they sit in silence. The boys gradually settle. Not happy, not healed, but present, aware someone stayed. Over the next week, supervised evaluation begins. Dr. Kimball's replacement, a younger man named Dr. Chun, no relation to the judge, arrives daily. Documents everything. Tyrell works under constant observation. Every interaction recorded. Every deviation noted. But he adjusts anyway. Small changes that honor the boys instead of protocols. Music during prescribed quiet time. Extra seconds between feeding swallows. Questions asked and answered through blinks. Dr. Chun writes it all down. Expression neutral. The boys start emerging again. Slowly, Kamari tracks Tyrell's movements. Silas's crying becomes less frequent. Elijah makes eye contact during therapy. Progress measured not in charts but in humanity regained. The custody decision arrives 3 weeks later. Email to Javante's attorney. Judge Chun reviewed Dr. Chen's reports. Custody remains with Javante. Board oversight ends. Medical decisions return to family authority. It's not victory. It's permission to keep fighting. Tyrell finds Javante in his office, staring at the email, not celebrating. "I'm broke," Javante says. Not actually, but comparatively. Lost contracts worth millions. Foundation dissolved. Half my company's board resigned. But you have your sons. Yeah, I have my sons. He looks up, eyes red. Is that enough? Ask them when they're older. Ask if they'd trade having a father who fought for them for a father who kept his empire. Javante nods slowly, knows the answer already. That evening, Tyrell sits with the boys during free time he insisted on, time Dr. Chun approved, time where nothing is scheduled except being together. He tells them stories, not prescribed educational content. Just stories about his grandmother, about growing up poor, about learning that worth isn't measured in what you have but what you give. Kamari blinks twice during a part about courage. Silas smiles. Small, brief, but real. Elijah's hand twitches toward Tyrell. Can't reach him. Tries anyway. And Tyrell understands that some victories aren't about winning. They're about refusing to let the system define what matters. The boys will always be paralyzed. The system will always protect itself. Justice will always cost more than most people can afford. But 3 children know their father chose them over everything. Know someone testified twice at great cost. Know that belonging is earned through presence, not power. When everything is lost except what truly matters, is that defeat or clarity? Subscribe and turn on notifications for the final chapter to see what home looks like when it's built on truth instead of control. Comment and share. What would you rebuild if you lost everything? Your words create community. Morning light cuts through the window differently now. No alarms. No predetermined wake time. Just sun rising and 3 boys stirring naturally, reaching consciousness at their own pace. Tyrell sits on the floor between wheelchairs, watching them transition from sleep to waking. A process that used to be managed by staff and now is simply allowed to happen. Kamari opens his eyes, sees Tyrell, blinks twice. Good morning. Tyrell blinks back. Morning. You sleep okay? 1 blink. Yes. Silas yawns. Actual sound accompanying it. Small victories measured in vocalizations that staff once discouraged as non-productive behavior. Elijah takes longer to wake. Always has. Tyrell learned that through observation, not charts. Learned to let him surface slowly instead of forcing alertness according to schedule. Javante appears in the doorway, barefoot, jeans and t-shirt instead of suits. His uniform changed when his empire did. He looks lighter somehow, less weighted by things that don't matter. I'm making breakfast, he says. Nothing fancy, but actual food. Not formula on a schedule. They've been experimenting with diet. Slowly. Supervised by Dr. Chun, who turned out to care more about outcomes than protocols. The boys can't feed themselves, but they can taste things, have preferences, experience food as pleasure instead of nutrition delivery. Silas loves sweet things. Kamari prefers salty. Elijah tolerates most foods but responds strongly to textures. Smooth is better than chunky, warm better than cold. These details matter. These details are who they are. The house is smaller now. Javante sold the estate, moved them to a place that fits a family instead of an empire. 3 bedrooms, normal kitchen, backyard that's just grass, not landscaping. Most staff didn't follow. J. Morrison took a position elsewhere. The educational enrichment specialist disappeared entirely. Marcus stayed, comes twice a week, works with the boys using techniques that adapt to them instead of forcing them to adapt. Physical therapy is about maintaining function, Marcus said during their first session in the new house. But it can also be about joy, about movement that feels good instead of productive. He plays music during sessions now, adjusts angles based on the boys' responses, takes breaks when they're tired instead of when the timer says. Tyrell carries Kamari to the kitchen. His weight is familiar now, the way his body settles, the way his head rests against Tyrell's shoulder. Javante brings Silas. Marcus, who stayed for breakfast, wheels Elijah. They gather around a table too small for the space they used to occupy. Javante serves scrambled eggs, toast, cut fruit. Nothing prescribed, just food. Who wants to try strawberries? Javante asks. Kamari blinks twice. Javante cuts a small piece, offers it on a fork. Kamari tastes it. His expression shifts. Pleasure, clear and undeniable. Good, Tyrell asks. 2 blinks. Enthusiastic. They eat slowly. No rush. No documentation. Just family learning each other through meals and conversation and presence. After breakfast, they move to the living room. Tyrell puts on music. Not educational programming. Just music. The boys position in their wheelchairs but closer together now. Forming connection instead of triangle isolation. I testified again yesterday, Javante says quietly. Senate committee investigating pediatric medical trials. They're reopening cases. Tyrell looks up. How many? Hundreds potentially. Families coming forward now that someone finally asked questions publicly. The board. Under federal investigation. Dr. Kimball retired suddenly. Others resigned. The system is protecting itself through attrition, but at least it's moving. That's something. It's not justice, but it's acknowledgement. They sit with that truth. Justice delayed through bureaucracy. Children harmed still harmed. But the silence broken finally. Voices heard. Patterns exposed. Kamari makes a sound. Small vocalization. Everyone stops. He does it again. Different pitch. Experimenting. Tyrell's eyes flood. Yeah, we're listening. Kamari continues. Not words, just sounds. Communication through noise that protocols once discouraged. His brothers join. Silas humming, Elijah breathing rhythmically, creating something together that sounds like music or conversation or joy. Javante sits on the floor beside Tyrell. 2 men who lost everything except what mattered, watching 3 boys reclaim themselves through sound. I don't know how to thank you, Javante says. Don't. You chose them. That's what fathers do. So did you. Tyrell shakes his head. I chose truth. They just happened to be part of it. Same thing. Maybe. Maybe truth and love and choice are inseparable when you're talking about children who deserve all 3. The afternoon brings visitors. 3 families Tyrell called months ago. The ones who said no initially. They're saying yes now. Coming together to compare stories, share documentation, build cases that might actually hold people accountable. They gather in the living room, parents and children, some paralyzed, some with different injuries, all harmed by the same system. The boys watch from their wheelchairs, silent witnesses to solidarity. My daughter lost speech, one mother says. They told us it was coincidence, unrelated to treatment. My son developed seizures, another adds. Same excuse. Tyrell listens, documents, knows this conversation is evidence, knows it costs them to speak. Thank you, he says when they finish, for trusting your stories matter. You testified twice. One father responds, lost everything twice. That's why we're here. Because you proved some things are worth losing for. They leave promising to stay connected, to keep speaking, to refuse the silence that protects systems instead of children. Evening settles. The boys tire naturally. Tyrell and Javante carry them to bed. A routine they share now, a ritual of care that belongs to family, not staff. Kamari's room is smaller than before, but it has windows he can see through. Posters of things he likes. Patterns, colors, images chosen through blinked communication. Good night, Tyrell says, adjusts blankets, dims lights to Kamari's preferred level. Kamari blinks twice, then keeps his eyes open, staring. What? Tyrell asks. Kamari's mouth moves. Enormous effort. Muscles that barely work. Sound emerges. Rough. Barely intelligible. Stay. One word. Years of silence broken. One word that means everything. Tyrell's vision blurs. Yeah, I'm staying. Promise. Kamari's eyes close. Peaceful. Certain. Tyrell stands in the doorway. Javante joins him. They watch 3 boys sleep in rooms that smell like home instead of hospitals. They're going to be okay, Javante says. Not question. Statement. They already are. We just had to learn to see it. They turn off lights, close doors, let children rest without supervision or documentation. In the morning, there will be therapy and meals and the ongoing work of existing in bodies that don't cooperate. There will be investigations and testimony and the slow machinery of accountability grinding forward. But tonight, 3 boys sleep knowing they're loved exactly as they are, knowing their father chose truth over empire, knowing someone stayed when staying cost everything. And that's not victory in the way the world measures it, but it's everything that matters. Some endings aren't about winning. They're about choosing what you rebuild when everything falls apart. Thank you for witnessing this story. Subscribe and turn on notifications because stories like this, about courage, truth, and choosing love over power, need to be told again and again. Share your thoughts below. Your voice adds to the chorus demanding change. Comment, share, inspire. Together, we create the world where children are protected, truth is honored, and belonging costs nothing but presence.